Hello and welcome to the Keto Man's Club podcast.
We're glad you're here, where each week we talk about men's health and lifestyle.
We do so with the foundation of the ketogenic diet and lifestyle.
If you don't know what keto is, stick around and you'll find out.
The podcast will bring you real, honest fun.
Each week we strive to uncover the tips and tricks that you can use in your everyday life to maximize your overall health.
Find the clearest path to becoming the best version of yourself that you were meant to be.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Keto Man's Club podcast. We're excited to have you here, and we've got a guest that you will not want to miss today with us, sharing about his life, about the things that he's working with, his story, but also the story of some of his family members. And it's going to be really eye-opening and really encouraging because he is seeing some excellent results in his family members' lives thanks to the involvement of keto and things like that. We'll get into all of those details, but before we do, let's go ahead and review and introduce my co-host. To my virtual right, I have Alberto. Say hi.
How's it going, everybody?
And to my virtual left, let's talk to Jim. Jim, how's it going?
It is great, sir. Thank you for the intro.
What's new?
What is new? Number one is we've talked over the last couple of weeks. I'm at a new job and I'm actually working in my office this week, no training. And we do a weekly Thursday morning staff breakfast and everybody takes turns doing that. So it is, I volunteered for my first shift and just wrapped up doing a big egg, cheese, sausage, bacon, breakfast casserole, if you will. So pretty much all keto for that. And it's ready to throw in the oven at about 6:30 tomorrow morning. So life is pretty good, man.
Awesome. So, Alberto, how about you? This will have already, this is going to come a lot later, but there's an important day tomorrow coming.
Yeah, I'm turning 40. August 22nd. Woohoo! So yeah, we're a day ahead of schedule. By the time this comes out, yeah, it'll be good and past. But yeah, tomorrow's my birthday.
Yep. And you'll be posting some pretty incredible health updates on your 40th birthday, making anyone who says that you, only break down with age to shame, because you are definitely not breaking down.
Yeah, I'm sure you've noticed there's been a severe lack of pictures of me anywhere. I'm kind of like holding back, and I was just like taking all these progress pictures and stuff, and I'm like, nope, we gotta wait. So yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna put them out there, and I don't know, it's cool. I dig it. I can't hate on myself.
Yeah. Well, for
Chris,
me,
is there anything new with you?
just working my tail off, more clients, more podcasts, more everything, more life. I've been really bad about doing well in my keeping my sleep schedule up and all of that. So that's something that I've actually been trying to do better on, and part of that is just being more disciplined in getting my projects edited before 2 a.m. And so I've been working on that and getting a little better at that little by little. And so hopefully I can continue to practice that bit of discipline and getting that done, and getting up for my new shift at 7 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. So it's a bit of a shift there as well. So yeah, but life in general is good, and just keeping busy and all of that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, if you need any extra energy, our friends over at Liquid sent us a gag flavor of Liquid, which is spicy corn.
Spicy
corn.
Yeah,
you heard that right. Spicy corn, and it's there. Yeah, it's there.
I've intentionally avoided elote whenever I spent time in Mexico and things like that, because I just honestly couldn't wrap my head around the corn in general, because obviously I've never been really big on corn anyway. But this was but elote, you add the chile and especially the mayonnaise, and I'm going no. So that one's all yours. We did review another one, and I and myself and Jim got to try it. Lemon lime, I believe, is what it was, and it was pretty good. How, Jim, you thought the same, right?
It was definitely one of those. If you have a thing for Sprite, 7-Up, I mean that kind of ideal, it is a perfect option for you. Very crisp, it's one that if you saw it on the shelf, you would grab it. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you that to check out Amazon or Liquid's website and check out the lemon lime, because it's a great drink for you.
Yep. And I believe by the time that we post this, the discount code will still be active. So it's open for a month starting August 20th. So if you're listening after this, unfortunately the discount code is expired. But during that month, the discount code is Keto Man's Club on Amazon, and you can that will get you access to a 10% off, I think. And I actually tested that and it worked great. And I got my case in the other room, and it was well needed because I was out for far too long. So
you sure you don't want spicy corn?
I'm pretty sure I'm good.
All right. Just checking.
Yeah, I'm good. They were
I figure if I dump enough salt and lime in here, it might bring back memories of childhood.
It probably would. So let's go ahead and start out with some shout outs real quickly. I want to dedicate the second half, or however long the rest of this conversation goes. I want to dedicate that to our guests. And so let's get the shout outs going. Corey J, he has been doing some amazing things. He posted his in-body scans that he's doing prior to a competition, about a weight loss competition. And in roughly, I want to say 9 to 10 months, he has dropped 100. It's 331 to 256. So 80, roughly 80 pounds. That's a lot of poundage to drop. And he is just doing some pretty cool stuff with he took his body fat percentage from 37 to 20% in that time. That's pretty significant. He's going into a competition, which is why he was doing all of this. And so he's just challenging all these other people. I'm seeing them on his personal feed, challenging everybody else in the competition. Hey, I gotcha. I'm going to win this thing, because they've actually got a pretty good prize on that for them. So excited to see what he's going to accomplish in this next little 45-day challenge. But he's been doing great work already, and I wanted to call him out for that. Alberto, how about you?
I got a few, actually. First and foremost, member, and we've had him on the podcast, David Blako. That guy looks like he got a little fire in his eyes, and he's continue on his training. His shoulder's getting better. You can tell it looks like his workouts getting more serious. He's buying supportive gear to be able to allow himself to push a little harder and still be able to take care of his shoulder. And it's almost like even his posts have taken a little turn in like positive attitude, and he's off a chill and most definitely on to kill. And I think that requires a little bit of notoriety. And then also fellow members Eric Maz and Kyle Bell, who I was working in Houston yesterday, and Kyle picked me up from the hotel, and we drove over to Eric's house and grilled up a bunch of steaks and all kinds of stuff. We just kind of sat out back with a bottle of whiskey and about 3 pounds worth of food and chilled out and kind of started the birthday celebration off early. So I thought that was super cool. And I just wanted to give those guys a shout out.
Yeah, it looked like you guys are having some good fun. Jim, who do you got for us this week?
I have two here. So the first one is Mark Lesney, who is a Texan as well. He is in Austin, and he had kind of the dad bod thing going on originally, and he's been posting pictures up on a pretty regular basis over the last few weeks. But as of about middle of August, he was about 23 weeks in to his keto transformation. We do the Transformation Tuesday photos members do every week. And middle of August, 23 weeks, about 50 pounds different. And you can definitely see the tone up, the start of the abs. I mean, it's just an amazing transformation. So kudos to Mark for doing that. And then, Chris, last week you touched on a little bit the Welcome Wednesday and the new members that we had or it wasn't Welcome Wednesday, I'm sorry. It was hitting that next level of membership and the submissions to go on our cover image. And we had so many of those, it was hard for when I was doing that to get everybody included. So I did something I don't normally do. I took the before and afters of those 40-some guys, I think, and did side-by-side images and put them in their own album in the Keto Man's Club on Facebook. So, when you see them all in a thread and then the different comments and everything, sometimes things can get lost because there's 8 replies or whatever and so on. So if you go and look for the photos in the Keto Man's Club Facebook group, you'll see that transformation before and after side-by-side stuff, and it's remarkable. With some of our past guests are in there. Some of these guys I've never really had a conversation with at all, but it's just amazing to see how great their experience has been with all of this.
Yep. Very, very inspiring and challenging and encouraging things being seen there. And I think that's one of my favorite things about our group is that we don't share these before and after pics as a general rule to, show off how good or how awesome we are.
No.
It's always to say, hey, look at where I started. Look at where I've come. You can do it too. That's really the attitude that comes across. And I really appreciate that because there's a lot of other groups that I've been involved with on Facebook that weren't necessarily keto, but, it's all showy, or people do that on their Instagram feeds, and it's all showy and, look how awesome I am. And yeah, you're doing great things, but,
but you're doing it, and everybody's at a different point on the journey. So
exactly.
As long as you're following that yellow brick road because it's made of butter, that's a great thing.
Okay. Well, I think the last piece of business that I want to hit before we dive into our guest is just a quick reminder. Please, if you get the chance to first of all, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a week in whatever podcast app you're on. We are generally speaking available on every single platform. And then second to that is if you get the chance to, please find a way to leave a rating or a comment. I know that this last week, one of the things that was brought up is that if you don't have an Apple account, you can't leave a comment on Apple Podcasts, which kind of stinks. But I think I've seen that there's some ability to rate on Spotify or other platforms. So if you see an option to do that, please do so. It would help us a ton to be able to get the word out and to be able to share with everyone, share with the world, the awesome stories of the people that we're getting to speak with. That's really the reason we're here. Okay. Alberto, you've had a little bit more time to actually interact with our guests today. So let's go ahead and have you kind of do a little bit of an intro, and then we'll dive right on in.
Yeah, absolutely. He was at Toney, and Toney, I'll let you go ahead and say your own last name.
Nikolatsopoulos. Uh-oh.
Yeah, that. He was at KetoCon, and through the wonders of the internet and Instagram, I just happened to see his picture, which was low carb. It says low carb WF, and it's a picture of the state of Texas. And I wondered to myself, I'm like, WF, and I kind of thought about it. I'm like, that's got to be Wichita Falls. So I reached out to him through comments. It is Wichita Falls. I actually have an account up in Wichita Falls. So last time I was up there, we're like, hey, let's get together and do something because we don't know each other, and that's what people do these days. So sure enough, another person that picked me up at the hotel went out and got some burgers. Had a hell of a conversation. What I thought the coolest thing was we literally never met each other. Got back to the hotel, we just sat in his car, basically just chatting for I don't know, what felt like 20, 30 minutes because we just felt like we had so much information to get back and forth to each other. And the following night we went out again, and this time he brought his lovely, beautiful wife with him. Another great night, more great conversations. At that point, I was like, all right, we got to have this guy on. He's got a ton going on. He's got a ton to talk about. So, man, dude, the platform is yours, man. Have at it.
Yeah, and we wrecked some fajitas also. I have firsthand knowledge that Alberto actually eats chicken too. I have witnessed it.
I need a photo. We're going to need to put that in the group. Any photos, totally welcome.
Photo or video, either one is acceptable.
Chicken was consumed.
Yes, and it is above par chicken. It's just all there is.
It really was.
I don't even know where to start because it's just kind of a tsunami of the last 8.5 years. I guess I'll start.
Where are you from?
I was born in San Antonio, raised in Dallas. So perspective-wise, we're kind of the Yankees of Texas. which is why I don't have a drawl, or at least I don't think I do. Both of my parents were educators. They actually met at Our Lady of the Lakes University in San Antonio, and I was raised as a principal's brat kid. I went to my mom's elementary school for a while. They tried to convince me to go to my dad's middle school, which that was not going to happen. That was so not going to happen. I'm about to be 45, and people still introduce me as, "Hey, this is Tony. His mom was our elementary school principal, or his dad was our middle school principal." It's like, oh God, guys, come on! I haven't done much else after that. So that's it's just kind of one of those things. Both of my parents were highly educated. Like dad had 2 PhDs, mom had 1. I was dragged around to all the universities locally when they were doing their PhDs. My favorite library is still the Library of Texas Women's University up in Denton. That's where my parents got their PhDs from. And I just kind of, when you hear Alzheimer's, you're like, the first thing people say is, "Hey, you need to be mentally active." Both of my parents, super mentally active. Brilliant within their field, taught at every level of education from elementary to collegiate level, retired as elementary school principals. I guess the best way to describe it is how my mom said once, she got to retire at the best job possible because she still got to be little kids' heroes. They retired into the neighborhood where my mom had been the principal of a local elementary school for 17 years. And it was not uncommon to walk through the grocery store across from our house, and people would stop my mom, and they'd have a little kid in their grocery cart. It's like, "Hey, this is Dr. Polis. She was my elementary school principal when I went to Pershing." And it's just like, wow, that's kind of cool. Both of my parents were obese my whole life. I have no memory of my mom not being close to or above 300 pounds. And she's only 5'3". So if you can imagine what Tweety's mom looked like, the little granny from the Warner Brothers cartoons, that was my mom, complete with the bun and everything. My whole life. Like, I just don't remember her being skinny. I have a picture of my mom being skinny with me when I was young, but no memory of that at all. My dad was the same way. He was a little short, round, brown dude. Strong as a tank. For being an academic, he was also very physical. Like, hey, if we're going to go do this, let's get off our butts and go do it. So it's like, when you're old enough to push a lawnmower, you're old enough to push a lawnmower. And that was just kind of one of those things. So they were physically active. My dad died the same way my mom is dying right now. Dad had Alzheimer's, dementia in the same kind of umbrella as dementia, of the dementia umbrella. Whether it was Alzheimer's or not, I couldn't tell you. My mom, Dad passed away in 2007. Metabolically broken, obese, medicated out of his mind, fell in the kitchen and he broke his femur. Was not healthy enough to make it through rehab. Went into a diabetic coma in the middle of the night. And that was the end of Dad. That was 2007. I came home. By profession, I'm an oil and gas and wind energy landman. So I do contract negotiations for land acquisition for oil fields, gas fields, exploration, pipeline right-of-ways, electrical line right-of-ways, wind farms, the whole 9 yards. I had come back from a project to help Mom kind of resolve all the issues with Dad, make sure she was okay. My wife and I were back in Dallas less than a year, and Mom's like, go, live your life, I'm fine. So I had already started working for another company doing wind farms, and we had an opportunity to move to Denver. We took that opportunity to escape Dallas. Denver's kind of like Austin, minus the mosquitoes and the live music. It's a cool town. We loved it there, and then from there we worked on another project in South Dakota, and from South Dakota we worked in Michigan, and then from Michigan that gets us up to about 2011, and end of 2010, beginning of 2011, and Mom started to show signs of Alzheimer's that she couldn't hide any longer, and my wife came back first, kind of kept an eye on her. I was busy tying up loose ends on my project, and I was reminding my wife that my mom was much older. My parents were older when I was born. My dad was in his 50s when I was born. My mom turned 40 5 months after I was born. So they were older. And to have a child in 74 at the age of 40 was not super common. So I was reminding my wife of that. My wife's like, no, something else is wrong. And when I got back to Dallas, you just couldn't miss it. She had a notepad where she was writing down words that she was forgetting, trying to remember them. We set up a camera in the kitchen to kind of figure out what she was doing at night. And she would go into the kitchen as she was starting to kind of get that diabetic crash in the middle of the night. And she'd go into the kitchen and just raid the refrigerator for anything that wasn't nailed down. My wife was trying to find a teaching position in Dallas, but it was the middle of the school year, so she went back to Starbucks and would bring home like frozen pastries and whatnot that hadn't sold or whatever in the day that they normally toss out. And my mom would try and fire up one of those frozen sandwiches in the middle of the night, kind of in a low glucose state where she's just kind of confused, couldn't figure out how to get it to where she could eat it because it was frozen solid. That was hard to watch. That was really hard to watch. And at the time, she was about 289 pounds. And there's something interesting about being that size also. When you lose all the weight and they can finally do a DEXA scan and all that fun stuff, they realize, they're like, wow, your mother's bone density is phenomenal. How did she do that? It's like, well, she was almost or 300 pounds for 3.5 decades, almost 4 decades. That's lifting a heavy object every day. It strengthens your bones. And that was the only positive out of it. She never drank soft drinks, so that never caused any of the osteoporosis or anything. But she was a metabolic wreck. By that Christmas, we had full power of attorney for her. I'd taken her car keys away. She was starting to play bumper cars. It was just all the stuff you hear about Alzheimer's, the dead giveaways. That's what we were seeing repeatedly, over and over. The final nail in the coffin when we started to actually realize we had to step up was that she was 8 months behind on her mortgage. And she would write the checks. She had this beautiful wood desk. I still have the desk. And it had this drawer on the right-hand side. And she would take all the bills. She would write checks, paperclip them to the envelope that had already been done. And she'd put them at the front of the desk. Thursdays, she'd go to the post office and drop everything off. And it's right next to the grocery store. She'd pick up groceries and come back home. Well, she'd forget about the stuff to go to the mail. So it's that normal little stack of envelopes was pushed all the way back to the end of that drawer. It's a 3-foot deep desk, 3.5-foot deep desk. And I mean, it was crushing digging through that. That was the darkest part of all of this. Well, yeah, that's really the darkest part of it. When we got full power of attorney to take care of her, the first thing we did was went into the doctor. And she and my father had the same doctor for 20 some odd years. So you've got a long history of her doctor prescribing medications, realizing that she's not going to take the medications, or just kind of writing her off like most doctors do, it seems like, that, oh, you're just going to ignore my advice and, not eat less and not exercise more, and you're going to get obese. And when we walked in there and sat down, her doctor laid everything out on the table, got us in to see a neurologist who was my father's neurologist as well. And once we got all of the data back from everybody, all the blood tests, everything, we sat down, looked at it all, and all the doctors agreed. We had 2, maybe 2.5, 3, if we were super lucky, years before my mom would pass away. She was that metabolically broken. They just could not foresee how the disease and her physical health would not deteriorate beyond any sort of saving after that. And I said, okay, what do we need to do to get her, help her out through this? We sat down with a dietitian, nutritionist. They, pull out the little flip binder triangle, kind of looks like you're going in for an Amway conference. And they start explaining health and nutrition to me. And I'm taking notes furiously. And they're giving me handouts and printouts. And they give me a diet. And for the next 6 months, every 2 weeks, we're going back to the doctor's office and we're doing all kinds of stuff and checkups and all the scheduled appointments that you wind up having when you are in your 70s in America as an obese person or somebody who is a type 2 diabetic for about 30, 40 years. And after 6 months of doing that, I sat down again with the dietitian. Dietitian looked at all of Mom's health numbers, and Mom had gotten fatter and sicker faster. And the dietitian told me either she's getting food from somewhere else or you're lying, just flat out. And I've got this 3-inch ring binder full of everything my mom had eaten or drank for the last 6 months. The very diet that they gave me, pen and pencil to it. My wife is looking over my shoulder saying, hey, don't miss that, don't miss that. We did this here and this here. And we're a team in this fighting to get Mom healthy. And everything that they're telling me is not working. I threw the binder away as I stormed out of the office. And across the street from where we lived was a Barnes & Noble. And I went into Barnes & Noble. I looked at the giant wall of diet books that they all seem to have. And it's like, when you start reading the titles, they're like real-world clickbait, every last one of them. I mean, it's just, and I've got a stack of them here in my bookcase. The Weight Watchers New Complete Cookbook. Another one. Juicing, How to Solve Your Health. I mean, there's just a mountain. All the Cooking Light cookbooks. And it's just, you open them, it just crushes you when you see what they have in. Because, it's just cut out the red meat. No, everything's low fat. And whatever you do, just make sure you increase your vegetables and your fruit, and everything will be better. Well, I did that, and Mom's A1C was roof. I mean, it was a mess. By then, it's 2012, and I said I got to do something about this. I was destroyed. I left the Barnes & Nobles without a single book. Went home and plugged into one of my favorite audiobooks, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And he makes like maybe a one-line comment about the often controversial ketogenic diet. And I'm like, I've looked at everything else today. Why not? And I started digging into it. And the first book I found was The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living by Toney N. And I opened the door to the rabbit hole. And I mean, I went all the way to the bottom with that, with keto. I'm probably 600 hours into audiobooks right now. I mean, you name it. If it's an audio, I've probably read it at least twice. The second book I read, and really, if I ever get to meet Gary Taubes, he is in so much trouble. Good Calories, Bad Calories is 25 and a half hours long on audio. And I finished that book, and 3 days later, I mean, less than a week, he introduced Why We Get Fat comes out on audio. I was so angry. I was so mad. But halfway through Good Calories, Bad Calories, I was sitting in our little library space that we had at the house in Dallas. And I've got the physical book in my lap. I've got my headphones kind of hanging around my neck. And my wife, Mel, steps in and she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I can't do this. This goes against everything I've been taught. Like these two books... No, like I know my science teachers. I grew up around these people. I know them. Like I have a personal relationship. This is against everything they ever taught me. And Mel, being the unstoppable force that she is, she looks at me and I'm going to be a little vulgar here. I'll try and clean it up a little bit. But she says, you need to get your wired. And your mom is out there and she's effing dying. You need to get this fixed now. And basically tells me to get my butt in gear and figure it out. So I pour myself back in Good Calories, Bad Calories. I finish it. And then after that, it's just a dominant. The Big Fat Surprise, Eat the Yolk, like everything that you can imagine. I've got the Paleo Solution here. I've got Keto Clarity, Cholesterol Clarity. I've even got Dave Asbury's The Bulletproof Diet, Abel James's Wild Diet. Like anything that put fat in front, I started reading. I've got Wilson's Ketogenic Bible. I've got Maria Emmerich is like crack. I've got, I think, all of her cookbooks. And then from there, it's Amy Berger's book, The Alzheimer's Antidote. I've got Mary Newport's book, What If There Was Your Alzheimer's? What If There Were... Dale Bredesen's The End of Alzheimer's. I've got all of these books that I just started going to, and I even read the ones by it's a husband and wife doctor team, and I can't remember their name, largely because I read the book and I'm like, nope, that's not going to work because I've already done that. That didn't work. It's just more of the same. And it just, I started working on it slowly but surely. I started shifting Mom's diets. I couldn't just yank the rug out from underneath her. Not because I didn't want to, I wasn't trying to sell myself on anything magical that the kind of used car salesman justification that we tend to find ourselves in, trying to negotiate for that extra Snickers bar or whatever our vice is, if it's cheeseburgers or whatever. It wasn't because of that. It was that Mom was just a metabolic wreck. And I just didn't want to jerk the rug out from her. By 2014, so 2 years later, we had taken Mom into the doctor. We had already divorced all of her doctors, gotten a new set of doctors. They tried to sabotage us the same way with, oh no, she needs to drink Gatorade and she needs to drink Ensure twice a day. And they're just garbage in a can. I mean, that's just no way to put it. When you look at the ingredients on the back of an Ensure bottle, it's just pure garbage. I mean, it's just carbohydrated sugar. I think the first 3 ingredients are sugar in one of its many forms. By 2014, and I just happen to have the paperwork here, Mom's A1C was sitting at 5.1. Where is it? A1C was 5.1, and her fasting glucose was 94. And that was drinking a almond milk smoothie every morning, which that's gone by the wayside, and everything gets better after that. But there was just nothing left in her blood work to justify it. Her total, let's see where the triglycerides. Triglycerides were on here somewhere. Her triglycerides were sitting at a 48. Total cholesterol was a 190. Without any medication. We'd already pulled her off. As everything was coming down, we started pulling medication. She was on 9 different medications when we started this as well. We're talking statin. We're talking blood pressure medication. We're talking medications to compensate for the side effects of the medication she's taking to lower her blood pressure and her cholesterol. I mean, it's just a cascading domino effect of medications. And once you target one of the big ones, it solves that, and then the other medications just fall by the wayside, and there's no reason to keep them. It just, as the medications were being pulled, she was getting better, which with an Alzheimer's, they're so heavily medicated. Oh man, they're so heavily medicated because almost everybody goes into it. 85%-ish, if not more, that go into Alzheimer's are going into Alzheimer's as type 2 diabetics, prolonged type 2 diabetics. And I mean, the crazy things you see them on that compensates for these things. Crestor, Namenda, Zoloft, Ativan, Donepezil and Aricept are pretty much the same thing. Risperidone, I think I said that one right. I mean, that's just a sample of some of the stuff that they have them on. And man, once you can start pulling them off of these things and the justification, they seem to get better. And their moments of lucidity or stable cognitive abilities and mood are prolonged, and their cognitive drops are smaller. Mom's been in a state of nutritional ketosis for probably 8 years now, if not longer. Once we figured the diet out, once we got rid of the stuff that just wasn't necessary, once we got her metabolically healthy, the best part about all of that is she shaved off 150 pounds.
Wow.
Wow, my gosh.
Yeah. And here's the funny part about that. They were worried that she was not going to be eating enough, and I was making her 4 meals a day.
Wow.
She was eating 4 meals a day at the time. And she was just, because we were we were working within the parameters kind of set up for somebody who is metabolically unhealthy, like Finian Volek and Dr. Fetke. Those guys were working with and kind of their guidance. It's like, yeah, let's do this. And it worked. It worked great. And we're talking somebody who is not active. Now, the downside with this is you really have to pay attention to it because Mom continued to lose weight because we figured out how to lose the weight. We hadn't figured out at what point we need to hit maintenance. And, we're talking 2012, 2013, 2014. I'm busy taking care of Mom. I am not a big fan of advice from the internet. I like using it like, hey, go read this book. This is my idea of what this book meant and did, but I'm not taking medical advice from the internet. And it just still hadn't blown up like it has now at that time. So you're wandering in a forest with no pathways cut in it. So we're trying to figure it out. There was no Dr. Ken Berry at the time on the internet. The closest thing we had was basically Jimmy Moore. And I think the very early hinkling that Keto Evangelist was coming was about this time period. I think, 2015?
Sounds right.
But I was so busy taking care of Mom and maintaining with Mom and trying to figure it out. I didn't have time to break away from that. And we just kept doing it, tweaking and tuning, adding things in, pulling things out. 2017-ish? Yeah, 2017. Yeah, about 2017, maybe end of 2016. I start watching Danny Vega's stuff, and I guess it was about 17. He starts talking about carnivore. And I'm like, okay, I want to see what this looks like. And I start playing with carnivore myself. 2016, I catch a side profile of myself in our favorite restaurant in Dallas as I'm walking out through the bar, and I'm like 312 pounds because I'm stress eating and I drink like a fish when I get a chance. And I'm like, I'm not going out like my parents. And that we were starting to take care of ourselves. My wife had put on more weight than she'd ever wanted to. And we started to take care of ourselves. Over 16 and 17, I shave off 75 pounds. She shaves off 35 pounds while still managing the stress of Mom, who's already lost all this weight. And I start playing with carnivore, and I'm loving it. I fall in love with it. Like Alberto knows and has recognized, the longer you do keto, you start to kind of lean, some of us, I should say, start to kind of lean over like, I don't really need this. I feel better without this. Or I feel better without this. Next thing you know, you're sitting there and you've got this ridiculously huge steak on your plate, and that's it. And it's been great. And then we started to slide Mom into carnivore. And when I started to do that, I was starting to hear about Paleomedicina out of Hungary, and kind of dabbling in some of the talks that they had that were posted on YouTube and various people discussing their technique. And it's super high in fat, moderate protein. And I'm like, all right, let's try this with Mom. And April of 2018. So let me back up. I'm sorry. So 2016, 2017, I guess 2017, my wife and I made an agreement when we started to take care of Mom that when she no longer recognized us and no longer recognized her house, we would sell it and we would move. And at that point, for Mother's Day of 2016, Mom no longer knows who I am. That was my Mother's Day gift, was that Mom no longer knew who I was. And I say that was my Mother's Day gift because that was actually when we realized she didn't know. But also it took the burden off me of being her son. And now all I have to focus on is being her caregiver. And that stress dynamic helped so much. That alone, I think, probably relieved most of the stress I was feeling, as well as guilt and anxiety, which there's a whole bunch of that as a caregiver. So early 2018, we sell our home in Dallas, and we pack up and move 100 miles west to Wichita Falls in April of 2018. And one of the first things they tell you when you move an Alzheimer's patient is they're going to tank. You're going to have all kinds of issues. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be terrible. And it may or may not get better. Most of the time, it doesn't. Mom's already full carnivore at this time, loving it. Her numbers are I would hesitate to say better than they were than 2014 because there's some things the doctors freak out, as we know from carnivore. But the important stuff, her triglycerides, her A1C, all of that stuff is solid, and they're happy. And it's as good as it was in 2014. So we move out to Wichita Falls. She's carnivore, and she starts to blossom.
Which shouldn't happen.
Yeah, which shouldn't happen at all. Like, she shouldn't be... She starts pulling words back into her vocabulary that have been gone for the last couple of years. One example is we're at the dining room table. One of the cats walks by and gets sick. She's got a hairball. She gets sick. My mom looks down and says, "Oh no, she's sick." At this point, we're 7.5 years. Yes, that was last year. So we're 7.5 years into Alzheimer's, or 7.5 years into a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And she's making current and contextually appropriate comments in complete sentences from somebody who hasn't been able to do that in over 2-3 years at that point. And it was just like, wow. And this, now, mind you, this isn't just diet. We engage in a whole series of other things that help with this as well. The linchpin for all of it is diet. Getting her metabolically healthy was the first step, and then everything else is just a +1 added to it. But she's adding more words constantly. For a while there, she went through a phase where it was like living with Groot. Instead of "I am Groot," everything was there right there for like 6 months. And now when she leaves the bathroom, it's like, "Hey, don't forget to turn off the light." She goes, "Yes, sir." And she'll turn the light off. And she'll walk out of the bathroom and I'll say, "Hey, you need to go with Melissa and go watch TV." And she'll look at me and say, "Yes, sir." Not down at the ground, but up at me. "Yes, sir." She'll take a couple of steps. And if she doesn't say it beforehand, she'll stop, turn back and look at me and say, "Thank you," and then walk down the hallway. That hasn't ever happened before this. After she started to get into the 2015-ish kind of full-on Alzheimer's, not recognizing people. But that's not supposed to happen in that order. She's supposed to degenerate, and she's not. I'm not saying we're curing Alzheimer's, but we're having better access to memory and social skills and things of that nature. We don't have outbursts. We don't have traditional sundowning like a lot of people do. I wouldn't necessarily say that what she suffers from is sundowning. I would say that because of the way the Alzheimer's mind perceives darkness or anything dark, it's a depth perception issue. So anything if she's in a car and it's dark outside, anything outside of the car is just this big black void, and it induces anxiety. And like if there's a shadow on the ground or if there's a blue stripe in a handicap zone, she will try and step over that as if it's 3-dimensional because she can't discern the depth of that anymore. We manage that with light control in the house. LED lights are phenomenal. Our hallway light is a bright white light, so it flattens out our hardwood floors so they look very flat to her. Her bedroom has an overhead white light. Also, it has lamps that are soft white. So when we're staging her down in the evenings, like we were discussing before we went live with this, she'll eat dinner between 7 and 8. And then from 8 to 9, she'll have music therapy in her room with the blinds closed, the soft white lights on, the overhead light is off, the bright white, and she'll start to mentally wind down. And the brain will start to slow down like we all should be before bed. And she'll do that. She'll do music therapy. We've got a playlist of just nothing but classic swing music. So it's Count Basie, Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller. And she just sings along, has a blast. She wears UVB blocking glasses all throughout the day in the house to manage cortisol levels. That's theoretically, my guess is that's probably why we don't have the outbursts, why we don't have the issues, is that she doesn't have ramped up. One of the side effects you see with heightened levels of cortisol is anxiety. She just doesn't have that. As well as we know from people on the Facebook group, you see one, you'll see 2, 3, 4, and it's just like a domino effect of people who are like, oh yeah, my bipolar disorder is just gone, non-existent. My depression is gone, my anxiety is under control. We're seeing all of these things in my mom. Like they're just, you can kind of overlap everything that Carrie Brown talks about with anxiety and bipolar and stuff that into every single Alzheimer's patient you meet or dementia patient as they progress through the disease. And the status quo diet, the standard American diet and our standard of care doesn't want to account for or acknowledge that diet plays a big part in this. Cortisol levels play a big part in this, particularly with respect to controlling and managing those levels. And that's one of the things we engage. From the beginning, we engaged with autism techniques for life skills, and actually working with a dementia patient on the autism scale is a phenomenal way to help them out. And it's kind of a built-in structure. So within autism, you've got high functioning, and then you've got all the way down to low functioning. If you start out working with skills at the high functioning level and scale down as they are progressing through the disease, they retain better. I think, experiment of one. I think that works better long-term for them, but it needs to be wrapped in with everything else that we're doing. So it's the cortisol levels, it's the music therapy, it's the diet and nutrition. A while back, we realized that mom is, this is the other great part about carnivore, my mom is physically strong. For being a teeny tiny little 126 pound, 5'3" woman with Alzheimer's, she is unbelievably strong because she gets plenty of protein, real bioavailable protein in her diet every single day. And I mean to tell you, if she needs help getting up and you put your hand out, she will grab a hold of you and she ain't letting go. It's one of those things. You're riding the thunder here, and she can pull herself. She can pull herself up off of the bed if she needs to. Getting her in and out of a car, she can lift herself up and position herself inside of the car. We've got a little teeny tiny Kia Soul that's kind of her buggy that we drive her around in. And she has no problem getting in and out of that thing whatsoever. I made a miscalculation when we bought it, though. It's got a black interior. Should have been a beige interior so she could see everything better. But beyond that, man, she is physically strong. Again, part of the nutrition, part of the diet. We're not seeing any decreases in that. She's not as active as I would like her to be. So we try and get her out socializing in public. The place where Alberto and I went to eat the first time, Back Porch, that's one of my mom's favorite restaurants. It's crowded and loud during a lunch hour or dinner rush, and taking an Alzheimer's patient into there is not something you would want to do. My mom loves it. She just has a blast in there. She just enjoys it. And then what we ate, which is basically their double bacon cheeseburger. We ditch the bun, add avocado and two sunny side up eggs on top of it. That's what we had for dinner, and that's what mom eats, and she will wreck it. And these are not little bitty hamburgers.
No, they're a good size for sure.
Yeah, and there's so much fat on that. Then her other restaurant that she loves is Texas Roadhouse. It's pretty much the only steakhouse we have in town, and if you've ever been in a Texas Roadhouse, they are loud. Even when nobody's in there, the music's cranked up. Yep. Mom loves it. In fact, we've got a set of waiters and waitresses that have waited on us enough times that they'll stop by, even if they're not waiting on us, throw an arm around Mom and ask, "How are you doing, Mom?" And she's just happy as could be to see them. She'll watch people in there all day. She loves it. And I will tell you, Mom will wreck a 20-ounce bone-in ribeye. You got to cut it for her now because she doesn't quite know how to use the fork and a knife together, but she will wreck a 20-ounce bone-in ribeye.
That's got to get quite the reaction. Or probably not anymore.
Okay. Well, actually, from the waitstaff, they thought we were crazy when we started. they get it now, but invariably, every other time, maybe every third time we go in there, someone always leans over from another table and it's like, is that all she's going to eat? Yeah, dude, that's a 1,200 calorie steak. You should have seen what she had for lunch. I mean, you just ate the same thing with a loaded baked potato, a whole basket of honey butter rolls, and mac and cheese and 4 sweet teas. You ate all of today's calories and tomorrow's calories. And I won't even get into any of the other stuff you ate. And that's kind of one of those things when people sit back and I watched an entire table sit back and stare at everything on their table, and you could feel them just kind of like, oh my God, we did that. And it was actually Texas Roadhouse why we started Low Carb WF. We watched a couple where the husband could barely get out of a booth, and then he had to help his wife out of the booth. And I have memories of watching my parents like that. And I'm like, I love this little town. This is such a great little place. I don't want anybody to go like my parents. I don't want anybody to suffer like my parents. My dad's last several years were just miserable. I mean, it was tough. And I always kind of stayed close to my family, my parents, because I knew from a really young age that my parents were so much older than everybody else's. I mean, my dad was basically everybody's granddad when I was born. He was a World War II vet. All of my friends' dads were like Vietnam vets. And, that had always kind of hung around in kind of the back of my mind. Like Dr. Barry, he's about to be 50, if not already. That my dad was in his 50s when I was born. And that's at some point, as a little kid, you're laying in bed and you're counting how old you'll be at a certain age. My point of contact was the year 2000. That was always fascinating. And I'm counting how old I'd be and how old my dad would be. I mean, my dad, he's 52 when I was born. So he was 70 when I graduated high school. As a senior in high school, my dad was 70. And the crazy part is he was physically active still. Like, he wasn't running and jumping and playing. But my dad could get in there with the rest of us in football and lift heavy objects. Like, that wasn't uncommon for my dad to do. His forearms were the size of my calves when I was in high school. I made the mistake of back-talking my dad once when I was 15. Once. It was kind of one of those things. It's like, if I'm going to do that, I need to do that in another county, because that's not safe to be in the same county Dad's in and talk back to him. And, to see my dad shrivel because of type 2 diabetes, like decades of that. When it was time to take care of my mom, I was like, we're not going to do that again. Like, I sat down and had the long talk with my wife, like, hey, this is where we're at. And this is going to be horrible and miserable. My wife came into my life as my dad had already been diagnosed with dementia and was already starting to diminish away. And she never got to know my dad before that. But she got to know my mom before that. And my mom had told her many times, joking, maybe only half joking, if you guys ever get divorced, he goes and you stay. So my mom always wanted a daughter. And I think my wife is who she fell in love with. And my wife has been so wonderful taking care of my mom and dedicated to her. We were fortunate, way personal, just going to overshare like all Greeks do. We had managed to screw up our marriage at the beginning. Instead of waiting 20 or 30 years to screw up our marriage, we screwed it up within the first 3 years. And both of us screwed it up. I am anywhere close to being the same jackass that I was when I got married, and that's a good thing. And we put ourselves back together. And it was a long, drawn-out fight for both of us. Because we both screwed up pretty substantially, and we weren't gonna. We are fiercely loyal to each other now, more so than ever, and we weren't going to throw that away. Even then, we were still pretty loyal to one another, but we found our way back together. I'm Greek Orthodox, but I had put my faith on a shelf for most of my adult life at that point. I got out and I lived. I made bad choices about the people I associated with, as people told me not to associate with them. And on the surface, they look like great people, but my folks knew, and other people in my life who I should have listened to more knew better. And I was like, no, they're great people. And no, I made bad choices, and I went down the wrong path. My wife was the same way, and we fought to put it back together in 2012. She decided, we got married in 2006, 2012. She decided she wanted to convert to Orthodoxy. And when she was doing that, because she had been raised Methodist and she felt that she was missing something. And when she did that, she drugged me back in. And that moment helped solidify our foundation, because all of this is happening in that first 2 to 4 years of taking care of mom when everything is still hard. And that helped build a foundation for us as things continue to get harder. And that's another issue that is super difficult with Alzheimer's is this only gets harder. It never gets easier. And it's every day on, no days off. You either fight it tooth and nail or it eats you alive. And I got to admit, the stress is always there. I always know it's there. But what we've done with my mom, we actually had a doctor's appointment today with mom, and we front load everything. So if her appointment is on Wednesday, on Monday morning, or I prefer Monday midday or afternoon, we'll go in and get mom's blood work done. So on Wednesday it's ready, because again, we live in a small town. It's ready on Wednesday, and her doctor and I and Mel can sit down and discuss everything that's going on with mom. And those appointments are 15 minutes long. And it's not because she's rushing to get us out of there. It's because mom is so healthy and great right now that there's no, we spend more time joking and talking about all the funny things mom is doing than actually discussing what's going on with mom, because she looks at everything. She's like, she's a rock star, flat out. Her doctor said, yeah, your mom's a rock star today. She's awesome. And I mean, it's great. I could justify a 15-minute doctor's appointment at that point. We only see the doctor twice a year, her primary care physician, because we don't need to see her more than that, because she's healthy. Now, granted, as a woman in America, if you're obese for 3-4 decades almost, one of their favorite things to do is say, hey, you've got a thyroid issue. Let's nuke your thyroid. So mom has no thyroid. So we have to go in every 6 months to get her thyroid levels checked and make sure that's okay. And then she's also on a low grade, she's on Xarelto right now for blood clots. She has a knee replacement. And, every decade after you've had a joint replaced, as you age, your odds of developing a blood clot in that area go up. Because, you're usually getting a joint replacement because you're old and fat. Let's just be honest. And that was the case for my mom. And she developed a blood clot behind her knee. That resolved. But she's got arterial fibrillation. Again, not uncommon in somebody her age, 84 now, with Alzheimer's and dementia. And you've got a choice of going on beta blockers and another drug, and I don't remember what the other drug is. The issue with it is they kind of need to go hand in hand. You just can't put a dementia patient on a beta blocker. The overwhelming majority of them, it just messes them up. Emotionally, cognitively, it just doesn't work. And there's a growing body of research out there pointing to this just not being a good combination. And she was on a beta blocker for about a month with the other medication. We're like, no, we can't do this. And her cardiologist is great out here, and we all looked at it. And his physician's assistant was the first one who agreed with me on that, going, yeah, I've got the research. I've seen it. We can't do this anymore. So we pulled her off that, but we can manage the AFib with the blood thinner that she had already previously been on. It's one of those things. If she had a thyroid and no AFib, she wouldn't be on any medication right now at all. She doesn't even take Alzheimer's medication because there's just no need for it. And when she was on the Alzheimer's medication, and when she was on the Alzheimer's medication, that was horrible because she was having hallucinations and she was having night terrors. And it's just like, nope, we can't keep doing this. So we pulled her off of that, and her sleep got better. And that's the other thing, is the only reason I know any of this about her sleep is because she wears a Fitbit. We track everything that we can track with mom at the house. So she's been wearing a Fitbit for several years now. She, every time during the day, during her waking times, every hour on the hour, she goes to the bathroom. When we get back, we run what we call her numbers, and we have a blood pressure cuff, and we run her blood pressure. We check the heart monitor, her heart rate monitor on her Fitbit. We've got an O2, the little finger sensor for heart rate, and O2 to cross-reference with the Fitbit and with the cuff. And, it takes us 2 minutes to do all of that when she gets back from the bathroom. We've got tracking. I can see how she sleeps at night. I can see her heart rate at night. What's crazy is we can get in the car right now. Well, not right now, but like say tomorrow we had something going on in Dallas that we wanted to go see. Since it's summertime, our days are a little bit longer. We'll get up when the sun gets up. We'll get mom up. We'll feed her breakfast. We'll all get into the car and we'll head 2 hours east to Dallas. We'll all enjoy Dallas, doing whatever we're doing in Dallas. And then we'll leave Dallas 4 or 5 o'clock so we can get in before the sun goes down. And as long as the sun's up, the last time we were in Dallas, my mom's heart rate peaked at 90. And that was in rush hour traffic in Dallas. I wish my heart rate was that low in rush hour traffic in Dallas. And the whole time we're in traffic in Dallas, mom's looking at the 18-wheelers like, ooh, that's a big one. And, she looks at the color of the cars and she's like, that's an ugly one. And I'm like, that's the same car you're in right now. Come on, lady. But it's things like that she's interacting and she's not upset and she doesn't have any anxiety. It's phenomenal. What's going on with mom right now, and she's kind of a stable rock. There are some funny things. There's a lot of funny things. We try and go grocery shopping twice a week with mom, again, just to get her out and active. Sam's is great, but we got to steer clear of the samples because they're all carbs, and she just doesn't eat that way anymore. And she gets so excited, it's like, nope. And she kind of hates it like a workout because she knows when she gets the cart, because the cart becomes a glorified walker, that the longer we're in there, like I'll start putting stuff in the cart and she starts to give me a look, like a dirty look, every time I put something else in the cart because the cart's getting heavier and she's got to push it. And she's not happy about that. But also we'll go to the grocery store. Her favorite aisle is the cereal aisle. She doesn't want anything to eat in the cereal aisle, but it's all the pretty colors on the cereal aisle. It's the same psychology for why they make the boxes look like that to attract little kids. She likes the colors, and she'll sit there. A box of tricks will keep her entertained for an hour. She looks at it like a piece of artwork, and she's just happy as can be. The other thing is sometimes she's got a little walker scooter, the little ones with the brakes on them. If we need to go to Home Depot, she'll go with us to Home Depot. I get now why parents put their kids on those little backpacks with the bungee cords. If you don't keep an eye on mom, boom, she's gone looking at something else down an aisle. She's got speed like you wouldn't imagine. And when she gets tired, she just spins that cart around and sits down and waits for us to catch up. It's like, really? Come on now. But yeah, we don't let her get too far away from us, but I get that. I get it now because she is fast. We'll go walk around the mall. Our mall is tiny, so we kind of have to pre-plan our bathroom breaks. But yeah, she'll do a lap in the mall. We kind of have a centrally located, not really a food court, but it's got a couple of cookie stands in the middle. And she'll get close to the cookie stands, and you actually have to slow her down. It's like, no, we're not going to the cookie stand. Come on, let's go. But yeah, she's physically a rock star. I mean, she's amazing. There's just so much that we do with mom. It's kind of hard to compress everything down.
It seems like you're almost like writing a guide, and I know you guys are super active in the community, and what are your intentions with all this information? And I know you're already doing stuff, but like talk about what your intentions are with all this information you've gathered, all this evidence that you've gathered, and what are you going to do with it? Because you and your wife are not the type of people to just sit still and be like, hey, check out what we figured out. We're going to keep it to ourselves.
But my wife is looking at me right now trying to figure out what she could poke me with to try and get me moving. So we've got something that we're working on Instagram, because I'm old enough to remember what bulletin board systems devolved into in the early days, late 80s, early 90s, and forums after that. And Facebook is great, and it's neat, and it's seeing how the Keto Man's Club works is so different than, and I think it's because of the moderators and admins, brown nosing here a little bit, but y'all do a better job of not letting it degrade into just kind of a monkey poop fight at the zoo. And I think what we really want to kind of do is lean on Instagram, and maybe at some point YouTube. There's a hesitation that I have that, if you're Sean Baker has kind of hinted at this every once in a while that as you come out and talk about being a carnivore or keto, people want to call in Child Protective Services on you. And they think that's okay and justifiable. It's why I spend so much time with my mom's records and keeping them handy, because I've had Adult Protective Services called on me. Because of where my mom lived in Dallas was a duplex inside of a condominium community. And everybody knew my mom. She had been the HOA president for several years. And they had only known her as a morbidly obese woman. And within, it took me about 2 years to shave all that weight off of her. And they called Adult Protective Services telling them that I was starving mom to death.
Oh,
and
geez.
yeah, and that's kind of one of those things that's the minutes, I knew from the beginning that when we started to work with her diet and she was starting to show signs of metabolically getting healthy and start to shave off some of that weight, I knew that at some point Adult Protective Services would be called. My wife and I had long discussions about that way before they ever showed up. And one afternoon, a really nice agent from Dallas Adult Protective Services, Dallas County Adult Protective Services, knocked on my door. And I said, "Oh, Adult Protective Services, come on in," which is something you never ever really want to do. But what was I going to do? So, and it had happened that we had seen her doctor the day before. And I had her giant binder of everything that we were doing with her. It was readily available. I said, "Hey, I'm going to tell you now, Mom has Alzheimer's. This is what's going on with her. I know you need to go interview her. When you get done, come back and I'm sure you're going to want to interview me too. So we'll sit down and talk about everything we're going to do." Mom was watching a movie in the living room, and he watched, he interacted with her, talked to her, watched kind of what she was doing. She was happy. And Mom's the happy Alzheimer's patient, and she's healthy looking. So he comes back, he goes, "Okay, so what are you doing?" And I said, "Let me guess why you were called. I'm starving Mom to death. I'm screaming at my mom, all these other things." And he goes, "Well, I really can't discuss." I'm like, "I know, but I know what everybody sees and hears." So Mom's got about 80% hearing loss in one ear and probably 30 to 40 in the other ear. So I'm Greek. I'm loud. We're all loud. But I have to speak in almost a tone like a drill sergeant for Mom to hear the commands clearly. And I don't mind doing that. So for other people looking inside, that's, "Oh no, you're screaming at this poor little old lady." Well, she can't hear. And if she's going to, do something to hurt herself, then she needs to hear. And then the other part was the starving her to death. And I just kind of opened the binder. I'm like, "All right, this is yesterday's medical report from the doctor. I can get you a photocopy of that. You can take it back. This is her diet." I opened the freezer, and at the time we were still full keto. So I had we were buying large quantities of frozen vegetables. My wife does not like green beans. So I was buying individual vegetables frozen in small bite-sized portions for Mom. And we were making our own vegetable blend that was keeping us within our keto macros, so to speak, for my mom. And you open this freezer up, and it's just stuffed full of, gallon Ziploc freezer bags, front to back of just nothing but vegetables. And there's like a bag of frozen meatballs in there. And then you open the fridge down below, and there's like 3 carafes full of water. And there's meat for that evening, and fresh vegetables that we were going to cook for another meal with Mom, and of course bacon, and that's like the only thing he could find that was questionable, he thought. But that's everything Mom eats, and I have her meal plans planned out for an entire week at a time, and it's we systematized everything to make it easier for her to eat and for us to manage. And what we did was we sat down with our own diet and looked at, okay, when we go out to eat, what do we eat? Well, it's maybe 2 different things per restaurant, and that's it. Like we all eat within this kind of weird, narrow band, and we never get really out of our comfort zone. So why shouldn't we systematize breakfast and lunch? And then if we're going to have a fancy meal, make it dinner and just change it up a little every couple of days. And that helps make it easier transitioning Mom to get healthy. The other thing is, when anyone is at that table, we're all together. We all eat together. Nobody eats alone. Nobody is ever alone. Specifically, mom. She's always with one of us. And we normally try and time our meals with mom. So we're all eating together. And that makes a difference also within the disease. But back to Alberto's question, what we're looking at doing is I've got an Instagram account. I've got some questions I'm really discussing with a legal counsel as to what I should and shouldn't do just for mom's safety. Because if someone calls Adult Protective Services and they don't agree with what we're doing, or they think we're kind of crazy because, hey, here's this grandma who's pretty much a carnivore, this can't be healthy. I see all kinds of bad things and crazy people doing it. We need to pull her out of that house. We do that, it will undo so much of what we've done. We used to have her in a daycare. She was in a daycare for only a couple of months. And just those 2-3 days a week would just wreck her metabolically, because it's everybody's birthday is at least once or twice a week. There's cupcakes, there's candy, there's ice cream, there's sugar-free syrup on everything, and waffles every morning for breakfast. And I can't risk that. Like a little kiddo, you put them in Adult Protective or Child Protective Services for a couple of weeks. Hey, everything works out. Hopefully, they can bounce back. Mom, I'm not risking. And that's our greatest fear. Is all I care about is protecting mom and chaperoning her to the end. We are mom chaperoned through this disease to the end. And once we have to say something, we want to say something about this. One of my biggest pet peeves about the disease, and you hear this from the gatekeepers of knowledge, so to speak, the doctors, the medical professionals, the medical industry that kind of likes to say, your Google research is not better than my medical degree. Well, my research is pretty thorough. JAMA has 5 different podcasts. NCBI has thousands of records, hundreds of thousands of medical peer-reviewed research online that I can search in an instant. British Medical Journal is online. I mean, everybody's online. I can look at it and read it. And if I get to a big word, I don't know what it is, guess what? I can Google that word and get a definition and learn all about it. Shoot, I could probably wind up on Khan Academy and watch a video and learn all about that. So what they normally like to say is, well, if you've seen one Alzheimer's patient, you've seen exactly one Alzheimer's patient. Well, okay. There's a couple of groups. One of them is 125,000 people on Facebook that is a dementia caregivers group. And you start reading that. And it's crushing, because if you ever get curious and you want to go in there and read it, and you start reading about all the problems, everybody has the same recurring problems. They're all on the same 5 to 10 medications, period. We medicate them like they're bipolar, schizophrenic, uncontrolled, the quintessential crazy homeless guy on the corner yelling into the atmosphere for no reason. That's how we medicate them, and we medicate them hard. And I don't think it's necessary. And the justification is, again, if you've seen one Alzheimer's patient, you've seen one, until you look at 125,000 people who are saying the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again for months and years on these groups. It's the same. Every group you look at is identical. They're all doing this. They're all having these same issues. And you get into the doctor's office and it's just the 3 of you in there. And the doctor's like, well, that's just you. They write off what you're saying is, it's just one person. We're all different. No. We're not all different. We are all bound by the same laws of human biology as everybody else. We're broken differently. We're all we all have the same rules we have to abide by, biologically speaking, as a kind of a blanket statement. But we are all metabolically broken differently, especially people with Alzheimer's and dementia who, again, 85% of them are rolling into it as type 2 diabetics. And we're not engaging the type 2 diabetes. I guess the other thing that's really crushing about these Alzheimer's and dementia groups is when you get in there and you hear people talking about their parents and, like we started throwing this really hardcore antipsychotic drug at mom and she no longer has outbursts. She doesn't do anything anymore but sit in a chair and drool on herself, but she's not screaming and shouting anymore. The doctor never suggested diet, never suggested changing anything. Everything gets bribed with ice cream. Ice cream is the magic tool to get a type 2 2 diabetic Alzheimer's patient to do anything. It makes my eyes bleed. I have pretty much removed myself from almost all of these groups. One of them, I had a knockdown drag out with somebody in there. And I'm like, I'm done. And I erased everything I had ever put into that group, and I backed out and left. And it's one of the largest ones on Facebook. And it's because they almost devolve into a death cult of, hey, what stage is your mom in? This is what my mom's doing. Oh, throw this medication at her. And anybody who steps in and goes, hey, there's a better way or there's another way, nope, you got to shut them down. I got yelled at by a large group of caregivers that suggesting that salt would help somebody would just kill them instantly. It's like, okay, let me get this straight. I looked at your Facebook profile picture, and it's you and your mom, and she has Alzheimer's, and that's horrible, but she's morbidly obese, and she's living in your house. And you said she's been there for the last, 6 years. And you're not doing anything about her diet or nutrition, and you're actively telling everybody to bribe Grandma with ice cream. She's not a type 2 diabetic because of genetics. She's a type 2 diabetic because you keep buying food to make her a type 2 diabetic and keep her that way. But the quality of life improves so much just by getting them metabolically healthy. My mom's a happy camper. I saw what she was like going into the disease, and in the disease, she was not happy, miserable and scared. If she had been in a ketogenic state going into the disease, she might have been aware, she might have been angry, but she might have been in a whole lot better place. And nobody wants to even discuss that. I keep going back to Carrie Brown because her story is so freaking powerful. Seeing that the overwhelming majority of people are just not willing to try just crushes me. And I don't want anyone to die like my parents. And that's the other half of my story, so to speak. 2016, my wife went in for a regular ladies' well-woman appointment with her doctor. They found an ovarian cyst, a teratoma cyst on her right ovary, the diameter of a softball and oblong in shape, going down her right fallopian tube. She went in for day surgery, came out, everything was great. That was on a Monday. On Friday, she was back in the hospital. She developed a post-surgical pulmonary embolism. On Friday, Sunday, she bled out for almost 10 hours, maybe 12 hours. We're not quite sure on the whole time because of everything that was going on. It wasn't like I was taking notes. And walked away with that with a traumatic brain injury. The statistical averages and odds of her developing early onset dementia are now through the roof. She has short-term memory issues. There are sections of her life and vocabulary that just don't exist in her memory anymore. They may or may not ever return. More than likely they won't. Everything that mom got, that we learned with mom, we're now overlapping and applying with my wife. We are super, super lucky. She's on the high functioning side of this. She is still Mel. She's goofy. She's fun. She's bright and happy. Again, she's ketogenic as well. She leans heavily carnivore as well. But when we're done with mom, the fight continues with her to keep her in that state. And, we experiment with everything with my wife as well. We use, things that I can't and won't do with my mom for ethical reasons. We do with my wife, which sounds horrible, but let me explain. When you look at the benefits of autophagy and fasting, particularly when you look at neuroplasticity and cognitive increase and healing, as well as what fasting can do for the brain as far as removing tau and plaque just on its own is amazing. My wife will go 3 days without eating, and she's a ray of sunshine. And for all the guys listening, that includes when she's on her cycle as well. She is a ray of sunshine, and that's not just because she's in here with me. But her mood is better. Everything is better. She's lighter and brighter. If we slide off the wagon for whatever reason, she's a wreck, and we could see it almost instantly. And unlike mom, she can articulate that. She could tell me how she feels, how her mood has changed. We use a dry sauna therapy with her. We just got an infrared dry sauna place here in Wichita Falls that we're going to start looking into for her to go to as well a couple of days a week and see how that helps as well. I keep on seeing Dr. Saladino talk about Juve lights and thinking that can't do anything but help Mel and my mom. I would love to, hey, maybe we could do a 3-day fast with mom, but I just won't do that for ethical reasons. I'm not going to say, nope, we're going to fast for 3 days, mom. No food for you, just water.
She would surely get confused by that, I would think.
You know what? It's kind of crazy. She probably wouldn't even notice. I kind of have some theories with sleep as well. There's a couple of interesting papers that other articles, I think Psychology Today had written about, and I think Dr. Georgia Eid talks about, is that sleep, good solid sleep can help remove some of the towels and tangles in our lives just on a regular basis. It gets back to the importance of sleep. And I know when my wife is well rested, she does better. I know I do better. And I can't help but wonder what, 3 days of fasting and 3 days of sleep would do for my mom. When you discover somebody has an AFib event, it's a freak out session and you wind up in the hospital for 5 days, which is what happened to mom. And in that time frame in the hospital, she slept a lot. She was still eating, but she slept a lot. And we didn't vary her diet. We did not eat any of the hospital food because that's just pure garbage. But we would bring in her meals every day, and we didn't leave the hospital. One of us was always with her, and that was usually me. And my wife would go home, make mom's meal, and then bring it back to the hospital. And it was one of those situations where when she got home, she actually seemed better. And all she did was for 3 days straight, eat, sleep, and, when they would let her, get up and go to the bathroom. And that was it. And it's just... My mom, a lot of the things you hear with Alzheimer's also is that they don't remember eating. My mom will eat an entire meal, and if it's, again, like the 20-ounce bone-in ribeye, if it's a fatty steak, sometimes she'll be super full, and she'll push her plate away. And she'll just look at it and go, okay. And that's our sign that she's hit her full spot. And she doesn't talk about eating. She doesn't talk about being hungry. As we know, the satiety hormones and how we feel satiety-wise while eating ketogenic and eating in a ketogenic state, that's not something messing with us. And I think there's something to that at a kind of a sub-psychological level in her brain, subconscious level, where she's like, yeah, I'm full. I'm not hungry. Hey, I'm watching my favorite movie. Yeah, this is fun. And she never talks about food. If you say we're going to go eat, it's like, great, awesome, cool. I get to hang out with you guys some more. And she's happy. But she just, we'll eat dinner, get her up from the table, take her to the bathroom, take her back to her TV spot, or sit down at her activity table and work on an activity. And there's no discussion about food at all. Like, she just doesn't talk. Now, she'll sometimes, like in the dead of summer when it's super, super dry here in Wichita Falls, she'll kind of look and kind of lick her lips like, okay, we need to get mom some water. But that's about it. It's just... There's so much. There's just so much. And I think we're engaging the wrong way. And there's so many more things that this plays into that I'm concerned about long term, not just with my family. I look at part of the reason we know what happened with my wife was I was talking to a friend of mine who was military, and she made a comment that after Mel had her MRI and MRA and CT scans and everything, and they couldn't find anything, we'd done a neuropsych evaluation, and the neuropsych evaluation came back with she has anxiety issues, she has PTSD-like symptoms, she more than likely has a traumatic brain injury. All of the signs in the neuropsych evaluation confirm that there's a traumatic brain injury. And then the doctor's looking at her scans and saying, nope, I can't see anything. Let's send you to an endocrinologist and throw some Adderall and a couple of other things at this. And my friend and I were chatting about this, and she said, you're in Dallas, you've got UT Southwest. They're kind of tip of the spear for SPECT scans and nuclear science for this. about, I think it's something like, it's in the 20 or 30 percentile of all of our military veterans who are experiencing PTSD, anxiety, have it diagnosed, have traumatic brain injury diagnosed, but their scans come back negative for any physical damage. When they're running through these SPECT scans and PET scans, they're seeing it within the brain. They're seeing the physical damage in the brain. Mel's physical damage is in her hippocampus and her frontal lobe. These are things you don't want to hear, because that's the areas that are affected by Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia. Hippocampus is almost all of dementia across the board. She is in a constant state of fight or flight, and that hippocampus is just cranked constantly. And when you look at our veterans who have suffered traumatic brain injury, or even our athletes who have suffered traumatic brain injury, I joke with a friend of mine that I played high school football with. How many concussions did we go home with after football? Because we were both linemen. It's one of those things that there's a tsunami about to hit as our veteran community starts to age. These younger guys who lived full contact lives, much like my dad did, we're going to see that crop up in them. We already are with our Vietnam veterans. And obviously our Korean War veterans as well. And the numbers just kind of get larger and larger. You hear about 22 veterans a day committing suicide. What they don't talk about usually is that's a lot of Vietnam veterans. That's not just the young guys. That's the older guys. And it's a lot of guys with the same symptoms and cognitive issues that a traumatic brain injury that's leading into Alzheimer's, or even worse, Parkinson's, where you have this kind of hallucinations that are accompanied with it, as well as Lewy body dementia, which is what Robin Williams had. You start seeing those hallucinations and that change in mood. And again, I'm going to go back to Carrie Brown's story. The way that our nutrition affects our mindset. How many of those guys could we have saved if they weren't eating the standard, just ETS'd out of the military, I'm still eating garbage, but I exercise 3 times a week and I'm still healthy and fit? You can't out-exercise that. You can't out-exercise type 2 diabetes. No, I tried for
years.
Yeah. And some of the guys that Gormy's podcast is phenomenal. Some of the guys he has on there, because they talk about that constantly. It's like, I exercise constantly, but I couldn't beat my diet, and it all comes back to that. And that's just kind of one of those things that's something else that kind of sits in my mind constantly. Law enforcement, firefighters, those guys. That's a full contact sport, no matter how you cut it. There's guys who get dressed in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Those guys get dressed every night to go fight. And it's a horrible thing to say, but that's the reality of law enforcement. And those guys, what happens after 20, 30 years of law enforcement? How many concussions do you walk away from in that 20 to 30 year time frame? And that's something else that concerns me. Like, I don't want anyone to go out like my parents. I just don't. Watching my dad shrivel and waste and just be confused, it's horrible, man.
Wow, so much, and we've been commenting in our group chat that we have between the 3 of us hosts that this is just such good information, but the story behind it is, I hope, extremely impactful on a lot of people, because for those people who are looking down the barrel or currently in a caretaking situation for someone who has a neurodegenerative condition like Alzheimer's, dementia, or brain damage, what you're saying is that there's hope that it doesn't have to get the worst of the worst. Thank you for joining us for the Keto Man's Club podcast. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Would you help us spread the word about the Keto Man's Club by sharing with your friends and family? We're available on all podcast platforms, so just search for Keto Man's Club and you'll find us. If you would like to connect with us, you can do so a number of ways. Our web address leads to our Facebook group, theketomansclub.com. That's TheKetoMansClub.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Keto Man's Club Podcast. Lastly, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out via email to ketomansclubpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to hanging out with you again next week.